Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Spiritual Times with me, Philip Solomon. Tonight, I'm going to answer a question that many of you have asked me many times, and I'm going to be absolutely honest. It's one that I often try to, well, to be honest, to dodge if I can, because it's a very difficult area that is really that I'm going to look at tonight. And many times you've asked me, why do some mediums cause, well, not cause, but charge very, very large amounts of money, whereas other mediums, perhaps like myself, if you like, who probably don't. Well, I'll explain it to you as best I can. The wide range in fees for mediumistic readings, from free, if you like, to hundreds of pounds or thousands of pounds or dollars, if you're in America or Australia, that part of the world, is driven really by a combination of market forces, business models and philosophical beliefs about the nature of what I consider to be a gift from God, as do others. While I suppose philosophical beliefs about charging or not charging or charging very large amounts of money, it's very difficult to explain. But here is what I would say is the reasons why there's so much a difference. I'm not in what people charge. And I had a job really to write me notes up for this one, because most of the very famous ones, especially in the UK and America, maybe France even, I know them. So that makes it somewhat difficult, doesn't it, really? But you could say it's supply and demand, if you like. Famous or highly reputed mediums probably have long waiting lists, rising prices, and there's a necessary filter to manage high demand and prevent burnout, if you like, as readings are emotionally and energetically, I should say, very, very exhausting. If you're a real medium, that is, if you really can do the work, we could discuss that for perhaps another time. But if you're a real medium, it takes a hell of a lot out of you doing readings and demonstrations. So why do some charge what you might think are massive fees? And I do as well, if I'm honest, but there you go. Like I say, it's supply and demand. I've told you the one reason. Experience and expertise. Very experienced mediums with many, many years of experience, or those who've proven accuracy. Maybe they're famous, been on TV, radio, perhaps written books, published books, which I've done all those things, but I've never charged massive fees. But, I'm just trying to explain it to you, They've had many years probably of training and what they think is a reasonable charge, they can charge. Respect fee. Well, some practitioners argue that high prices ensure clients take the reading very seriously and do not waste the medium's time or energy. I suppose that could happen, couldn't it? If you charge a lot of money, perhaps people will make sure as they listen more carefully and accept what you say. I don't know about that. Business overheads. Now, that I would understand. Like any independent contractor, professional mediums have to pay for marketing, website maintenance, travel, all those sort of things, staff. If when I worked doing demonstrations, we had to have someone to set all the gear up and make sure everyone could hear at the back of the theatres or the halls. I always used to like to give roses to people that I gave readings to in my work. Some of you will know that, but it meant we had to get somebody to do that. Somebody has to be on the door taking the money and explaining, answering questions before people come in. All those have to be paid out of whatever you earn. And if you're right, I was always lucky, really. I would probably do a 50-50 with a theatre or event, something like that. But all those other things would come out of my money, and I would end up with very little. That didn't bother me, but for some people, even when I did my own Wolverhampton Theatre, where I come from, I kept the tickets down. I think they were about £10, something like that. And by then, theatres were starting to charge £25, £28. Today, if you're going to see somebody at one of those events, it's going to be £30 upwards. And if there's 1,000 people in there, not many are going to get messages. I would always do a lot of messages, but there's some mediums will only do about five or six and but they spend a lot of time on that one person. I just used to give the facts as quick as I could, get them accepted and move on to the next one. So as I could do, I don't know, 25, 28 messages. Those who've seen me work will know that. But I don't know what sort of fees do they charge today. Well, the minimum I should think in a theatre, £30 upwards. If there's two of you, that's £60, isn't it? Uh, I've told you all about the business overheads that they have, targeting specific clientele. iFees may be used to attract, I suppose, if you like, what they consider wealthier demographics, ensuring the medium works with fewer, more focused clients rather than a high volume of potentially more demanding clients and not needing half as much to be done for them. Very demanding. If you've worked for celebrities, which I have, and they can could be quite demanding sometimes, and they're entitled to be like that. Letting you in on a little secret though, often, what you would call famous people, they don't pay for readings because they see, you're the same as them, and you've got to do it for nothing, or maybe for what they consider appropriate. They think they're very important. I suppose they are, aren't they, in some ways? What else can I tell you about? Why do some charge so little? Some don't even charge anything, do they? Mediums and psychics. But you've got to remember building experience. Newer developing mediums often offer free or low cost readings to practice and build up their confidence, client testimonials and reputations. They're sort of only just started, so they probably only charge, I don't know, 20 to 50p, 20, 20 to £50, something like that. I only charge 35 now. And I suppose I am a famous medium, to be fair, really. I hope so. Yeah, I've worked in radio, TV, I've written 35 published books, feature writer for Psychic World and Psychic News. So if anybody would be a famous medium, it would be me. But I don't choose to charge very large fees. That's my decision, you know. I could ask for £500 for half an hour, and some people would pay it, but I would feel bad about that. I think, it's a God-given gift, and you've got to do your best to be available to all people. The same as when I've worked in local events to where I am, small venues, and I haven't charged the promoters very much at all. If they'd have booked a famous medium, other famous mediums, maybe a couple of £1,000 or £200 or £300. And if they weren't the turnout that I thought they deserved, I'd give them some money back. I don't know of any other mediums who do that, but that's my choice, isn't it? So, I'm not really going to knock them for that. But ethical and philosophical beliefs, many feel that a spiritual gift should not be made money from, or that fees exploit vulnerable, grieving people. I don't know about that. I suppose realistically, it probably is true of some mediums, but I think it's like everything else in all walks of life. You have good and genuine, and you have those who are not. And there ain't too much anyone can do about it. Look for their reputation, look for what other people have said about them, and try and make that a guide for you. Charity or services. Some mediums, like me, believe in giving back or that their work is a service to the community, may even offer free sessions to some people or work at spiritualist churches. I used to do that years ago. I've started doing it again a bit more recently, and I don't take anything off them at all. Whereas, again, if they have a special Saturday night evening with them, probably not the very famous mediums, but well-known mediums, they will make a small charge, I should think, for their services. But you've got to remember as well, it's an energy exchange, isn't it? Some believe that money is not necessary to balance the energy of a reading, or what they prefer to receive in compensation in other forms, such as donations or bartering. Well, I think that would be horrible to be bartering about the price for a reading. But sometimes I might say, make a donation, and some people give you something for appropriate and acceptable. You have to be a bit careful with that, though. With some people, they won't be honest about that and take advantage of you, and leave you a small amount of money or something. Key factors impacting costs then. Location. Mediums in major cities like London or New York typically charge a lot more than those in smaller towns due to the higher costs of living and doing business. I'm amazed how people never realise that. But I know all the famous guys. They're all friends of mine. So I'm not going to pull any to pieces individually. Some of them are not even with us anymore. But type of reading, a simple, quick or email reading might be cheaper for you than a comprehensive in-person session, which might include recorded audio, deeper, multi-layered or long-form mediumship type work, and that would take a while to do. You've got to think of, I've got to come to this, fame and publicity, because this plays a big part in those mediums who can charge. Well, the better one known ones in America and in this country probably charge £500 for a reading upwards, £500 upwards. Some of them thousands of pounds. I couldn't do that, mate. It's a gift from God, and but that's my view. I don't judge other people, and some will say, well, if people can afford to pay that and they've got long waiting lists, they're entitled to that, wouldn't they? But fame and publicity, mediums featured in TV, magazines, have been interviewed on radio, have been on TV, are very well known, have written published books, and their name is known in the spiritualist world, perhaps, but not that, just the wider context of being celebrities, which they are. And you might say, oh, still, I wouldn't get to the theatre and pay £50 to see a ticket to see them or whatever. But, if you went to see Harry Styles or someone like that, check out what the tickets would cost for those. That's probably not a very good example, really. But, if you got tickets to see a very well-known singer, anywhere, really, you know what that ticket's going to cost. It's going to cost you hundreds at minimum, isn't it? And I suppose, in a way, they even more entitled than the medium who's done all that work and may do some good things to help people. Me, I don't agree with these massive fees, but I'm just trying to be fair. Again, maybe their reputation goes before them, regardless whether their accuracy differs from lesser known mediums. I wouldn't like to comment. I know some mediums who work freely and don't charge anything at all. And I keep my fees very, very low. I was always happy, really, just to cover my expenses. But again, something that those of you who know me well will remember, I nearly always worked. I've got a daytime job, and or in my closer to my retirement, going around to care homes and doing a little bit of work like that and singing for them and all sorts of things. But not everybody has got that position. They just want to, and they've worked up to being famous. So you got to pay if you want to see them. Uh, I suppose it can feel a bit jarring to see one person offering a reading for £35, like I do, with others charging, like I've said, £500, £600 upwards. This disparity usually comes down to a mix of business logistics, which I've explained to you, personal experience, and the psychological value assigned to the service that they're giving you. Now, I know that sounds a bit, sort of giving into depth a bit, but what basically I'm saying is, they probably worked very hard to get where they are, and maybe years ago They were happy, not to charge the massive fees that they do. I'm not going to name them, but you all know the American mediums and the British mediums who would charge fees like that. But there's also mediums, as I say, who don't do that, and I don't do that. But that's my view, that's my way. My mother was just the same. People have said to me, you ought to be a millionaire. Maybe they're right, but I don't mean anything to me. I'm happy with what I've got. I have a lovely family, lovely wife. I've got a car a van that I can drive, I can get around with. And if I could help people, especially in the past, doing events that would raise money perhaps for charity and give me a fee. Yeah, I always liked to do that. But I worked all the theatres, did most of the theatres up and down the country. But I'd always try to come up with the remains, an arrangement that wouldn't cost a lot of money for the people coming along. Reputation and celebrity status, that's what it is, isn't it? The most significant driver of high fees is demand. Mediums who have written those books, who have been on the telly and done all those things in social media, often have quite long waiting lists. And why is that so? Well, I suppose because they see them on the telly or they read their book and, they want to see them. And, the logic, let's say if 2,000 people want a reading, but the medium only has 5 slots that week, they will raise their price to manage that demand, won't they? Many of them will do that, won't they? The premium, you aren't just paying really for the reading, are you? You're paying for the brand. And that brand is, I am an experienced, well-known medium. You've read my books, you've seen me on the telly, you've listened to me on the radio. My fees are XXX. And if, you don't really want to pay that, then go and see somebody else. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? But that's about it. I would try and keep my spaces available for people who I thought were really suffering, were in need. And I used to do loads of local events all around Wolverhampton and Birmingham and a bit further afield. And, nothing like charge the venues and charge the people coming through the door. Hardly anything really, maybe a tenner or something like that. But that was my choice. And if you think about those overheads for those venues, didn't get much for doing it. But, I was happy to do it. Other well-known mediums are not, and they are entitled to charge what they feel appropriate for what they can do. It's right, isn't it? Business overheads, I've already mentioned it to your staff. They may employ assistants who will manage their bookings, answer their emails. One of the things that a lot of people have moaned at me about, and I can understand it, is often when you get in touch with those famous mediums, you book your reading and it might cost you £300 or £400, and you find really that reading is done by one of their assistants or one of the people who work for them. They may well be good mediums or psychics or card readers or whatever. But I often wonder if that's really fair. I sort of would support the customers in that because you're paying that £400 or £500. So as you can say, Mr. X or Mrs. X, aren't you? But that's something that I don't like at all. People often say to me, oh, I booked a reading with, you know, and when I got through to the reading, it was one of his assistants. Well, my advice to you about that is find out beforehand, will you be seeing the actual person or one of their assistants? And make it quite clear that you don't want to see one of their assistants or colleagues, you want to see that person because you're paying a premium price to do so, and you should do that. Other thing that you have to remember as well, if you're a professional medium, office space. You've got to rent in a professional studio in a major city like London, Perth, New York. Those places are very, Adelaide, all that, very, very expensive to have offices in those buildings. I suppose the internet has changed that a lot, but it's still a darn expensive thing, marketing the high quality websites that those people have. I just have a very simple one. And a good friend of mine will put up and tell you a little bit about me, a few pictures, bit of the stuff I've done over the years, Been very lucky, really. I've played most of the major venues, big theatres. Even got an invite to Buckingham Palace to go and take tea with the Queen and take my lovely wife with me. And that was a great reward to me. That probably meant more than earning a load of money, but probably wouldn't mean a lot to the very, well, I don't know. They like to get those gongs, don't they? Those MPEs and that sort of thing. I've got to be honest, I'd love one, but I probably ain't got enough publicity to get one. I think might be entitled. I've done voluntary radio for 20 years. I've kept my mediumship work available to all. And a lot of people who are famous to say, oh, I wouldn't be interested in that, even in RBA. Oh, I would. I'd love it. I don't, what more award could you have than from the Queen or your King, the King today, of course, the lovely King Charles. So experience and specialisation, just like any other profession, seniority plays the role. The pro, sometime who has done 10,000 readings, perhaps 20,000 readings, is likely to be faster, more precise, and better at handling the emotional weight of a session than a beginner. Now, a lot of people don't think about that. There are a lot of beginners that, it's very hard for them to quickly get the speed to get the readings done and to give you the accuracy that you want. I was a born medium. My mum was a medium before me. My dad worked as a medium and in the spiritualist churches. And it is important, really, that something to think about. Service orientated. Some believe their ability is a spiritual gift that should never be commodified by charging. These individuals often work through spiritualist churches or pay what you can donations. I would be in that context, but I understand why some of the famous, well-known mediums don't work in that way. Some of them do go in and do the churches, though. Not all of them, but some of them do. Why some readings are free then or very cheap? Well, there might be students, they've been sitters, as we call them, in development circles, or have even taken specialised help and classes. I do that, Again, I don't charge an arm and a leg for it. But if you wanted to go along and be developed and learn to be a good medium, you could do that at your local spiritualist church. But if you wanted to get along fast and maybe you wanted to learn a few of the things to help you in your career, you better learn a bit of stagecraft. Because I always say, if you go along and do a theatre demonstration and 500 people are there, 250 have probably been dragged along by their partner or their loved one. Mind you, it don't make no difference to me that more often than not, I'd give them a message rather than the ones who come along. But you understand what I'm saying. I'm sure you take my point of that. Platform work, that's what spiritualists call, being up on the rostrum. Mediums often demonstrate for free sometimes, or otherwise for expenses. And you can go along and give a free will donation of a couple of pounds, £5 or whatever you would put on the plate these days, I don't know. But that's a possibility. Lost leaders, some may offer cheap 10-minute intro readings, hoping you will then book a full price session later. Be careful of that, because a lot of famous mediums have done that the last 20 or 30 years. They offer little 10 minutes introductory card reading or something like that. What you could get between you, it take you that long, I should think, to be starting to get onto their vibration. But they do that. I would avoid that if I was you. I think it's helping that will show you something quite spectacular that impresses you, but then leads you into paying a big fee for a full reading. Okay, some of the red flags to watch out for, as I always call red flags. That means be careful, don't fall for things. A reputable medium, regardless of price, should never pressure you into needing to come back and see them every week and stuff like that. It just shouldn't do that. In fact, if even my celebrity people, readers. And I've have a lot of those, I promise you, over the years. A lot of celebrities have come and seen me, and they would like to speak to me every day or at least once a week, but I won't allow that. I always say you can't come back and see me for at least 3 months, 3 months, and they can get quite offended by that, celebrities really, because they think that you're there and they're paying you and you should be available to them whenever they want. They don't understand that the reason that should be at least 3, maybe 4 months, is to make sure is you start the reading afresh, and you don't sort of going over the same old thing. It's a good idea as well. Nothing wrong in having a few questions lined up before you have your reading. At the end of your reading, you should always be offered the opportunity to ask a few questions, and yeah, that's about it really. It's been a bit. I know some of you probably hoping that I was going to name these famous mediums. I know them all, and they all know me. But it's up to you, isn't it? Really, if you're willing to go and I said Harry Styles. No, what do you wonder what a ticket costs to go and see Harry Styles? I bet it's a few £100, or Adele, or somebody like that. Well, now celebrity mediums have probably worked as hard, and the real ones, the genuine ones, it takes a lot out of us. It's very, very tiring to go and do a show on a small event, even with maybe 300 people. Local events, I always packed them out. They always turned up in numbers. More often than not, there'd be people outside trying to see if they could get in. But the reason for that is because I'm a good, honest, genuine medium, and I'm happy, to cover my expenses and earn a little bit of cash in other ways as well as through my mediumship. I wish they would all be like that, but it's price, isn't it, that fits demand of the celebrity medium or psychic. And if you want to say them, who am I to tell you that you shouldn't? And I'm sure that some of them are quite good, allegedly. So that's it for this week. Don't waste your money. Count your money very carefully. Be as good in your life as you can, and love each other. Always have love each other. And that goes for you mediums as well. If you're reading this, see if I've mentioned your famous names, which I haven't, but everybody would know who you are anyway. But be kind and have love for each other, and you'll never go far wrong. Thank you for joining me this evening. Good night and God bless. And I'll be back to speak to you again in a week's time.